ladies and gentlemen, mute button. Welcome to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_dada. All right, well, I hesitate to tell you what the plan is for today because I never know if I'm even going to have time to get there. So why don't we just start off with some of the little news notes, updates, things to make sure we're all on the same page before we move on. Let's start off with something that I think we probably knew, but it's good to get some confirmation on. Here is Ian Rappaport speaking on Micah Parsons, his injury in Week 1.
Yeah, we'll start right there with Micah Parsons, the new Packers pass rusher, defensive lineman, was a linebacker with the Cowboys. Now a defensive lineman, obviously that mega trade that happened, I believe it was a week ago today, seems like 800 years ago, but a week ago today, 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark going to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for Micah Parsons, who got $47 million per year based on new money. And then we find out that he's dealing with a back injury. It is a facet joint sprain. So the injury that he was dealing with in training camp, why he didn't practice with the Dallas Cowboys, wasn't fake. It was actually real. My understanding is Micah Parsons is expected to play. He's going to do what is necessary to get on the field. Matt LaFleur saying as much yesterday, saying that Parsons is doing everything he can to make that happen. I expect it to happen, so Packers fans should get a look at their new star as early as possible, and that is a very good sign against the Detroit Lions.
So, some additional confirmation from Ian Rappaport, and, you know, a lot of people say a lot of stuff. Ian Rappaport tends to be on the side of, I'm not going to say it unless I feel pretty confident that I can report it. It's different if people like ask him a question, obviously, where you just kind of give your opinion. But this is, hey, Ian, you've got some news for us, I believe, you know. So he's got some confirmation. He did kind of waffle a touch in terms of not being 100% certain. But I think that really comes down to essentially pending any kind of a setback or new injury, he will be out there. Again, I think we kind of knew that. But I know a lot of people are very worried about it, so it's just further confirmation for those out there that are concerned that this may be super serious. As of now, he's ready to rock and roll. As for Jordan Love, and this is just confirmation from other Packers reporters that have done various different shows and whatnot, but Jordan Love is good to go for the game. He's been practicing with a protective wrap on his left thumb, but is now handing off with his left hand, which is a positive sign. Watson obviously is not going to play. However, the belief right now is that his return will be around Halloween. Now, if that is the case, we're talking about a potential return of in and around that Steelers game. Steelers are playing Week 8 on October 26th. So again, no real shocking, he's coming back super early kind of a thing. I think this has always been roughly the timeline. It may be a touch early. This is before Halloween, and obviously he would not have had much time to practice, or I shouldn't say that. He's probably going to be practicing in some limited capacity. But we're looking at probably the earliest would be against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which could be good or bad. It would be nice to have him kind of as a return to the Aaron Rodgers game, to have him out there as an additional threat. There is also a concern about, you know, when he comes back, there might be some growing pains, kind of getting back into the rhythm of things and the feel of things and getting the timing down with Jordan and everything. Maybe you tuck him away for one more week, because after that we just got to, because that's a Sunday night game. The next week is a regular old noon game against the Carolina Panthers. So I'm just saying, if you want a nice, easy acclimation game to bring him back into, then again, Christian Watson, obviously, even if the ball doesn't go to him, that threat of speed is always going to be something to help open things up. So that may be something to keep an eye on, I guess. Something else that came up, it's, you know, at this point, it's nothing really more than an eye roll, but I think, you know, just stuff it in your back pocket. Tuesday, November 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Packer time, is the trade deadline. That is roughly a week away from Christian Watson coming back. I won't even bother mentioning names right now because I don't want people getting too upset, but if you just think about it in terms of we will have plenty of time to find out who fits, how well, and how they fit as far as the wide receivers are concerned, and hopefully getting Christian Watson back. And you could say, well, how do you can you trust him to stay healthy? Fair enough. But it's worth mentioning that there may be a situation, and remember, there's two sides to this. It's not just the Packers want to get rid of somebody. It's a question of, could somebody possibly be valuable enough to where they're throwing around compensation that whereas the Packers maybe weren't initially interested in doing so, the compensation is high enough to where they feel like it needs to be done. That's kind of what they said about Rasul Douglas. It wasn't really a plan to trade Rasul, but when they offered us as much as they did, and of course, in the back of their mind, they're probably assuming he's gone after this year anyways, they thought, heck yeah. So it's entirely possible that with, Watson coming back, Reed hopefully getting back to full health, the rookies potentially playing at a decent enough level, especially Golden ideally. Maybe, and I said I wouldn't say names, but let's just be honest about it, we're probably talking about Dobbs or Wicks. I know the thought on Dobbs is the Packers are never going to let him go. We'll see. The coach is going to speak that way, but it's not up to the coach. And as far as Wicks, I think the question would come down to how much value can he actually can he play well enough to where a team would say, I'll give you a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick or something? Probably not. But that is one of the things to keep in mind, especially in and around the trade deadline and as the season goes on. Are we positioning ourselves to where we have an extra borderline redundant receiver that actually has some value in terms of draft picks? And let's not also forget, we gave away 2 first-round picks, and I think Brian Gutekunst is probably having a slight panic attack. I don't think he's going to recoup the first-round picks, but if he can load up on 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever, I think he's going to want to do that. That Rasul Douglas pick, by the way, is how we went on to select Tyron Hopper. We'll see if that ends up being a good or bad pick from the offseason. So far, it seems like it's quite a good pick. And as I said 2 off seasons ago, he also was looking quite good. So it's one of those guys that I like that we just haven't really had a chance to see. There's quite a few guys, like Oladapo. Could even throw Morgan and Belton into that mix of guys that, if they were forced to start, there's a chance they'd be quite good. But there's also no chance they can start. Morgan, you can argue maybe that's not the case, but I think he kind of got railroaded by our guard injury. And honestly, I don't know how good of a chance he has because of his flexibility. I guess that's a stupid thing to say, because he could just as easily play left tackle and kick inside pending an injury, and then Rashid would be the left tackle. So, whatever. Just a thought. Keep an eye on the trade deadline. And that does cut both ways as well. Packers are obviously usually sellers at the trade deadline, especially having lost picks. You wouldn't think that they would. But there's also a pretty heavy narrative of the Packers have definitely gone all in. And if there are any glaring holes, whether that's due to injury or just the corners look bad, or we definitely need a defensive tackle or something to think about. By the way, I have not seen the Cowboys-Eagles game, so I don't have any thoughts on it. I do want to very briefly talk about Chiefs-Chargers, but nowhere near as in-depth as yesterday. Just a couple quick hitters, and then we'll get out of there. But another Brazil game, so keep an eye on that. We'll see if they get screwed as hard as we did with a mass of injuries that just derail an entire season. Obviously, that happened to us, and the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl, so... You can expect the Chargers to lose half their team and the Chiefs to get right back into winning the Super Bowl again. Got a report here from Adam Schefter, because we haven't heard a ton about who else was in on the sweepstakes and whatnot. One team that made a strong play this summer to try to trade for All-Pro linebacker Micah Parsons was none other than the Philadelphia Eagles, per league sources. Good luck, Philly. The Eagles called the Cowboys to see if they could acquire Parsons and bring him back to Pennsylvania, but the Cowboys had no interest in trading Parsons in the division, especially to a defending Super Bowl champion Eagles, whom they open with tonight. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, you know what I mean? I mean, the Packers could have used that same logic and not even picked up the phone, but just makes you wonder who else, Eagles wanted him, they tried, got to watch him now go to Green Bay. It's also one less team you can't hear talk about, oh, you didn't want him anyway, he's overrated. Some quick NFC North hits here. One of the funniest narratives that I've seen, or conversation pieces, whatever, centered around this. Bears coach says coming days will determine how heavily team leans on Williams in the opener. Ben Johnson is their new head coach. It says Johnson is as curious as anyone to see how it all plays out, starting with the opener against Minnesota Vikings. Quote, "There is, of course, a giant unknown," he said Wednesday. "The big unknown this week is how much the Bears will get from a young quarterback adjusting to a new system and staring at one of the NFL's top defenses." Johnson said the next few days will help determine that. Quote, "I go back to when I was in high school going into game days, and we only throw it about 5 times, he said. Now, we were a really good team. We ended up winning state my junior year, and I would come out of the game wondering, why didn't we throw it more than that? As a quarterback, it goes back to, what did the week look like in practice? I think that's why the preparation and how it looks on the field is so important. I think we'll have a good feel as a coaching staff for what we're going to get out of Caleb on Monday night and how he approaches the next few days." This, to me, is hilarious. First of all, and I was told I was wrong about this, but one of the constant considerations I've had is, what is the benefit of bringing in a Ben Johnson, who we're supposed to just assume is a offensive genius? Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of variables in Detroit to know that he is 100% of the situation there that made the offense what it was. As if the players did not contribute to that. The environment that was built by the head coach, the other offensive staff, like none of that was anybody but Ben Johnson. Okay, sure. But even if he is a wizard, here's my issue. What if Caleb can't do it? Which, by the way, I have been saying consistently throughout that I think that was a big part of the reason why the Bears team failed last year. It's why every offense looks the same in Chicago, no matter how many coaches they go out and get. Because Justin Fields and Caleb Williams had the same issues. They couldn't run any kind of complex offense. They can't get through their reads. They can't read defenses, and so everything ends up getting dumbed down. And so they hire a new coach, and the situation is, oh, this is a really good play caller, and blah, 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 blah. And then they get mad at him because you end up running these really boring plays, like, oh, this offensive coordinator's an idiot, and everybody knows it. Did you even watch the games? Did you see how bad it was? Did you see how stupid it was? Did you see how... Yes, I did. The question is why? Why didn't they run all the fun, crazy, cool things that you wanted? It's because the quarterback couldn't do it. Usually you would see them start open and slowly get more and more and more and more conservative. Run the ball, check down, run the ball, check down. So yeah, you can have the most creative, crazy offense in the world, and we've dealt with this numerous times with our defensive coordinators. We bring in a new defensive coordinator, and he's going to fix everything. Yeah, but there's a limitation, and sometimes it's your players. Remember that tension we'd always talk about between, do you want a super creative, everybody wants a super creative defensive play caller. We always wanted these guys that are brilliant schematically. The problem is our guys couldn't do it, and they ended up needing to adjust down to what our players could do, even last year. Right? Oh, he's going to be this really big man coverage guy. We ran zone more than anybody else. Why would we do that? Well, we have corners that cannot play man, and we have no pass rush. So you can like all the creative stuff in the world, but it's not going to matter. But the funniest part here is that even at this point, you've got the head coach going, yeah, I don't know, we'll see how practice goes. Really? Practice is going to make the difference? Can you imagine if somebody had asked the question about Jordan Love at this point? I know he's got an extra, 1 year on him? But if it was kind of like, do you think you can open up the playbook for Jordan? Or it's like, what are you talking about? I have a feeling Bears fans would have much rather heard, yes, Caleb Williams is an incredibly intelligent quarterback. He has, even in this short period of time that we've had together, an incredible grasp of the offense. And I am not in any way afraid to open up the playbook and allow him to go out there and do what he does best. That's not the answer we got. He ends up dancing around the issue by talking about, well, when I was in high school, we ran the ball every play. You know what I mean? Think about it. In high school, did they pass? Barely. So, if we never pass, would that be so crazy? Yes, because I'm sure this week of practice, something is just going to click. Bill Belichick has banned Patriots scouts from attending UNC practices to scout their players? What a douche. What an absolute idiot. Sorry, I'm seeing this scroll across here. Ari Mirov says, this is the latest petty move by Bill Belichick, and in the big picture, it only hurts his players and future recruits 100,000%. That's the problem. You think players are going to want it? First of all, good luck getting players to come to UNC when, number one, your team sucks. And number two, when scouts come to try to determine if they want you on the team, your head coach is saying, get out of here. Don't you want your guys to get drafted? What an absolute idiot. Oh, my Lord. What an embarrassment. All right. You've got an article here by Jeremy Fowler that says, now that we're past the preseason, watch for the Bears to flash some creativity to maximize quarterback Caleb Williams. Fowler wrote on Thursday, my sense from people in Chicago is that while head coach Ben Johnson would coach Williams relentlessly on the basics throughout camp, they would eventually play to Williams' strengths, utilizing his mobility and off-platform throwing as an off-script playmaker. Bears fans could see more of that in the regular season. Here is again circling back to my question. You want to do that, obviously. What happens if it's not working? What happens if you try to play to those strengths and utilize his creativity with his legs and whatnot, and he's fumbling the ball, or he's trying to throw off platform and his accuracy kind of sucks, and he's making bad decisions and he's throwing interceptions? Whatever the case may be, the point is, what happens when it doesn't work? I'll tell you exactly what happens because we've watched it every single year. Last year, the year before that, the year before that, the year before that. They want to open it up, and then when you can't do it, they have to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink the playbook. And then what's going to happen is the offense is not going to be good. Fans are going to be watching a game going, why are you only doing this? We have Caleb. He's this elite playmaker who can do X, Y, and Z, and you're restricting him to doing this, 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 and you're not cutting him loose. What is wrong with you? And then they'll blame the coaching staff, they'll blame the offensive coordinator, they'll blame Ben Johnson, they'll blame all these people and say the reason we're not doing it is because you're not trusting your guy and because you're not allowing him to do this, because your offense is too vanilla, it's too boring. What happened to Ben Johnson in Detroit? I guess it wasn't Ben Johnson that did it. It was Detroit, the head coach or whoever all along. And they're missing a very simple component. These people are not stupid. The offensive coordinator last year who got fired in disgrace is not an idiot. Go look at the Seattle offense that he ran compared to the offense he ran in Chicago. It's not the same. Obviously, they wouldn't have hired him. So why did he change it up? Why does everybody just become an incompetent idiot all of a sudden when they get to Chicago? They're not incompetent idiots. They can only ask the players to do what they're capable of doing. So there's still a question of maybe Ben Johnson can unlock him and turn him into this great player. Maybe he can do like what Matt LaFleur did to Malik Willis, where I don't know that Malik is necessarily an elite player, but he can tailor an offense around him, which I think that can work in the short term. I don't think it works in the long term because eventually people will adapt and you're going to have to readapt. And it's like, I can't adapt. This is the one thing we can do. And it sucks for them going up against Minnesota. You'd rather go up against a crap defense so you can pull all this stuff off and everybody gets excited. I'm also going to be really interested if they just unload the bag. Remember a couple years ago when they did that? I think it was the Justin Fields Bears against the Green Bay Packers. I don't know if it was week 1 or what it was, but man, they unloaded everything at the Packers, and I think they narrowly won but still lost because that was their freaking Super Bowl. The problem is now it's all on tape. You can't do it anymore. So I hope they unload everything against Minnesota and scratch out a win to beat Minnesota, and then just are dog crap the rest of the year because there's just nothing left. Lions fans are already annoyed and complaining. I don't know if this is how far and wide this is among the fan base, but everything I'm seeing among Detroit media is just a bunch of whining, which makes me happy. Lions wide receiver gamble almost immediately backfires in week 1. So essentially, Detroit saw this Isaac Tesla guy, said, this guy's really good. And so they decided to trade Tim Patrick to the Jaguars. Well, Isaac Tesla is injured. Depth has been an issue for the Lions receiving corps recently, with Khalif Raymond having to make 5 starts over the last 2 years. Injuries will always be a reality, and willingly living up talented depth like Patrick is a gamble, especially when you consider Jameson Williams has only played in 33 games across his first 3 seasons. Having just Raymond and rookie Dominic Lovett as your 3rd and 4th wide receiver options in a crucial divisional matchup against the Green Bay Packers would leave Detroit fighting a much tougher battle than they need to in week 1. And this is what we need to be remembering as Packer fans as well. We're not the only team that has issues. The team we're going up against also has the same types of fans and the same types of media. You're going to hear the other side of this too, where the Lions are perfect and everything's fine and all that kind of stuff. But I think what some of the negative Packer fans and even some of the middle ground Packer fans, I always think of fandom as kind of like politics, where you got the left, the right, and then you've got your centrists, which actually make up a large portion. And the funny thing is that the centrists can be pulled and swayed kind of easily. And so part of the reason I'm doing this is because a lot of times when a narrative builds up, it's the centrists that are the ones that get like magnetically sucked to one side. And it's like, I'm not going to worry about the negative fans. They can't be moved. Positive fans will never believe anything negative no matter what, so I don't have to worry about them. But these sort of centrist fans is like, guys, come here, let's come over here real quick. Look at this. You got to remember, as much as the Lions are a boogeyman to us, and they should be, because they're a good football team, and that's all I really mean by that, as far as like it's scary. Every team is scared going into every week. Even against a bad team, you're like, oh crap, what if? But you got to understand, Detroit fully understands this is going to be a tough matchup. Going in week 1, divisional opponent against the Green Bay Packers. You can play all that, oh, you almost got swept last year, bullcrap, all you want. You know for a fact that the Green Bay Packers are a playoff team every single year. They're a double-digit win team every single year. You beat the Packers twice last year, once by 3 points. This is not a walk in the park. You got Micah Parsons now to contend with. You got an offensive line that has started to fall apart. You lost your offensive coordinator. You lost your defensive coordinator. You should be nervous. And now you go into it looking at it going, look, we've got our receivers and that's cool. Our depth is bullcrap, though. Like, we got our number 1 guy, we got our number 2 guy, and then we just don't have anybody else that should ever be on a football field ever. But it's not just the wide receiver depth. Here's an article from Michael Bolin. Lions suddenly turning on Zadarius Smith may become future regret. Almost the exact same story here. Though the Lions enter the 2025 as clear Super Bowl contenders, that's almost a sentence, fans still have concerns. One of those lies on the defensive line, Aiden Hutchinson starting the year flanked by the often injured Marcus Davenport and unreliable depth behind them at edge. This has led to constant calls to bring back Zadarius Smith, who made it known he'd like to return to Detroit, and clearly still has something left in the tank after registering 9 sacks in 2024. Yet, his pleas have fallen on deaf ears, causing frustration that leadership won't bring in a talented player who wants to contribute to a championship run. 97-1 The Ticket posted, why haven't the Lions brought back Zadarius Smith? Dan Campbell, quote, we're good right now. A little further down, Lions pushing away Zadarius could backfire. And it is true. The fact of the matter is, as much as Aiden Hutchinson is an absolute beast, and he is, and I can't promise you he isn't better than Micah Parsons. He may be, he may not be. You can't really look at last year. He was 95 grade number 1 pass rusher. He played like 5 weeks. His numbers were astronomical and completely impossible for anybody to ever replicate. But even ignoring last year, he's still up there in the conversation for best pass rusher in football. The problem is that the rest of the defensive line sucks, so that if you would choose the Lions' defensive line over the Packers, I think you're an idiot. If that's a little too harsh for you, I think you're mistaken. I think you should take a closer look, etc., etc. Marcus Davenport is 29 years old. He hasn't played a full season since 2022 because of constant injuries. If you look at last year's grades for their edge group outside of Aiden Hutchinson, Carter, 48, Pascal, 53, Davenport, 53, Muhammad, 61, Nowaski, 51, Wheat, 46, Ukwu, 59.6, so 60. The highest pass rush grade was Andre Carter II, who had a 66 pass rush grade on 16 snaps. Of the guys that had over 100 snaps, 59.8 was the highest pass rush grade from Al-Qadin Muhammad, who ranked 73rd among pass rushers. On the defensive line, Alim McNeil, good football player on PUP. Onwuzurike, decent football player on PUP. Their other defensive tackles, 61, 66, 55, 52, 43, 45, and 59 are their PFF grades. And as far as, but they're going to get McNeil and Onwuzurike back, not really. Onwuzurike is out for the entire 2025 season. And McNeil, the consensus is that he will miss the first few months of the 2025 season. So kind of like a Christian Watson thing. And then when he comes back, he's coming back from an ACL tear. I mean, we'll see, but a 315-pound guy coming back from an ACL, I don't know, man. We'll see how it goes, I guess. I mean, that's rough. Again, we'll go through this more when the actual game comes up, but just speaking in terms of where things are at, I think there should be some concern if you are a Lions fan, because the fact of the matter is, you can never fully erase an Aiden Hutchinson, but you can certainly minimize his impact, especially when there's not a lot of other guys that are dominant football players. Regardless of what you think of Rashawn Gary, and there's a wide range of views on Rashawn Gary, the Lions do not have a Rashawn Gary. They don't have we're going to put all our resources on one guy and just not worry about Rashawn Gary at all. That's not really a thing. I mean, it can be a thing, probably not a smart thing. So this is not to say, the Lions aren't a good team or a team to be feared. As I just said, they absolutely are. But, people keep talking about the Packers like, well, they just have too many holes. They just have too many holes. I don't think you've actually looked at any of the other teams out there. I mean, the Eagles, yeah, they don't have too many holes. Although you could almost, people get mad at you if you say, you could almost put them in the same category as what people wanted to put the Packers in, which is they're good everywhere. They just don't have a lot of blue chip players. It's pretty close. I mean, A.J. Brown and Saquon, blue chip. They probably do have too many that you could call blue chip to put them in that category. But it's kind of close. Both safeties, their entire defensive line, tight end, quarterback, number 2 receiver. They're all good, not elite. Anyways, all right, let's take a break. We'll be right back. Some more breaking news here, which, again, I just find funny and all the more reason to be happy that I'm a Packer fan. The Amari Cooper return apparently is no more. He just informed the Raiders he no longer wants to play football. That's got to be bad, you know what I mean? Like, imagine you're a chef and, your career hasn't been great. You haven't really gotten that job at like a Michelin star restaurant. In fact, you're struggling to find at normal restaurants. But you got a job at a prison and you made a meal for somebody, and it was somebody on death row and it was going to be their last meal. And they tried a little bit and they're like, never mind, I'm not going to eat this. That's the Raiders with Amari. Amari probably didn't get a ton of attention. Not a lot of people wanted him. The Raiders wanted him back. Come on, we'll revive your career. It'll be great. And he spent a handful of time with the Raiders, going through the worst part, by the way. It's the offseason stuff they don't want to do. It's the regular season stuff that usually these guys get excited about. But he spent a decent amount of time with the Raiders and just thought, screw this. This team sucks. They're not going anywhere. I'm not doing this. I mean, I can't retire in the middle of the season. That'd be kind of messed up. So, I'm out of here. All right, a little bit of news. Packers are practicing today. Right out of the gate, Jaden Reed foot and Nate Hobbs knee return to practice. This is the first actual practice work for Hobbs since July 31st. Third straight practice for Micah Parsons, so 53 of 53 practicing. As Hodkowitz says, everyone has a helmet and appears to be practicing for Packers on Thursday. Packers president Ed Policy at practice. There's, of course, more videos of Micah Parsons just doing seemingly insanely unnecessary workouts to torque the back. He's working with a giant, massive, heavy medicine ball where he's got to twist and lift to fling that thing back and forth. It's just so unnecessary if the guy's got a serious back injury. You know what I mean? This is the kind of work you're doing if there's basically zero back pain, and we're monitoring it. If you feel a little twinge, we'll calm down, but otherwise, let's just go for it. So far, 0 twinges. So very good news. I don't know what that means. I know prior to today's workout, the assumption was Nate Hobbs will not play. I don't know if that changes by tomorrow or if he's still expected to be out. We'll have to see. But it's got to be good news that he's at least getting closer with an outside chance that he actually may be suiting up and starting, which presumably is a good thing. We'll see. But all right, I'll tell you what, let's do this. A couple little clips that I found here. Just abandon our other plan. The first clip, I'll just straight up say, I don't like this a ton. I'm going to play it as sort of a hype thing, but I don't personally super love it.
He's my MVP pick.
Why is it so freaking quiet? Come on.
Time. What is this year now? 5, year 6 for Jordan Love? The organization did something they haven't done in 20 plus years. They took a first-round wide receiver, Field Yates, not a lateral comparison, but said Matthew Golden, who they took out of Texas, reminded him a lot of Steve Smith. So this is arguably the deepest skill group in the NFL. 5 or 6 legit NFL wide receivers, 2 really good tight ends. Jordan Love's crazy talented. This has been an offense that pass game-wise has been like relatively efficient. but hasn't necessarily had the volume. If I'm Matt LaFleur and I got Micah Parsons on the other side, I'm chucking the heavens out of the football this season and saying, be aggressive. This is a quarterback that has all the physical ability to get it done. He has to take that big
And you're talking about.
All right, so this is Dan Orlovsky saying his MVP pick is going to be Jordan Love. First of all, these guys do this all the time. They're always wrong. How many times do we have to hear Kirk Cousins MVP? All these different MVP. I feel like now the odds of him getting MVP are just zero. You freaking cursed it. The other thing I hate, and I've talked about this before, is the narrative that like Matt LaFleur restrained Jordan Love in some kind of a way. The entire problem, in my opinion, that we have with Jordan Love is the hero ball, launching it down the field 24/7, and of course the interceptions that come with that. I don't necessarily mind saying we're going to be aggressive on fourth down or whatever because we trust our defense to get the ball back or get a stop or whatever. That's fine. But we just need to start chucking it down the field. No, we freaking don't. No, we don't. We do that too often. Those are low percentage plays. It's a big part of the reason why Jordan Love's stats are not that good is because every pass is 20, 30, 40 yards down the field. If his completion rate is ever going to come up, we're going to need some more 5-yard passes mixed in. You know, a couple 10-yarders, maybe some 12-yarders. But, you know, I appreciate the nod there, Dan Orlovsky. Then we got CBS's Pete Prisco on Pardon My Take talking to, what's his name, the giant Bears fan over here. I forget his name.
I feel like every year you come on and tell us the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl. They added Micah Parsons.
They got hurt last year.
Okay.
No other team has injuries. Yeah, that's a good point.
Micah Parsons gets added. Is this now a Super Bowl team because of Micah Parsons?
No, they were my Super Bowl pick before they added Micah Parsons.
So now you must be like, they shouldn't. Are they going to go undefeated?
No, they're not going undefeated. That's a brutal division, man. That's a tough division.
Yeah.
They're not going undefeated, but they were the youngest team in the league last year, had all those injuries. Love was hurt the entire season. They go to Philly, and they get that crappy fumble on the kickoff they recovered, and
terrible call.
Nobody saw the recovery. They lose. It sets a tone for the game, and they lose. I think they were still built to win. And you look at them. I'm telling you what, Matthew Golden might be a star right away. That's how good he is. And I was there for a couple of days in camp. He didn't drop a pass. He's got unbelievable hands. The receiver core, when everybody gets back, because Watson will be back in about 6 weeks, they're good there. The line's good. They can run the ball. And I still think Jordan Love never got over the injuries last year. You're going to see a different Jordan Love. So offensively, they're going to score points. Defensively, they have some issues still at defensive tackle, particularly with Kenny Clark being traded away. But, man, they're going to get after it at the quarterback with Parsons and Gary and Van Ness.
I appreciate everything about that. Now, I don't know that Jordan Love is going to be 2023 Love. I don't know that. I don't think anybody knows that. Some people pretend that they know that. That's fine. You can pretend that. But we don't know that. We don't know what Jordan Love is going to be. He might just be a bad quarterback. You know, I mean, I understand the logic of 2023, he was great. 2024, he was hurt, so what's there to figure out? First of all, small sample size. Second of all, extremely small sample size, because 2023, he was only good half the year, not the entire year. And even that half of the year, he had two of his worst games. Like, it was appallingly bad games, even down his dominant stretch. We also don't know that the injuries played 100% of the problems that were in there. Some of that could have just been regression, period. So we don't know these things, but I appreciate that he at least acknowledges and understands the injury situation. A lot of people talking about the Packers like, oh, Jordan's not. Do you know that he was hurt? Well, everybody has injuries. No. That's not my question. Do you understand that Jordan Love, the quarterback of the team, was injured for basically the entire year? Some weeks more than others. Some weeks maybe he was perfectly healthy. I don't really know. But he had a bunch of injuries pretty consistently. Do you even know that? Are you acknowledging that? The other thing is when he says there's defensive problems, I was ready to roll my eyes straight out of the back of my head when he was going to say corner. He didn't say corner. He said it defensive tackle, and I agree. I think defensive tackle is the question mark, not corner. I'm hopeful that the guys we have can do well enough, especially with the linebackers that we have doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the run game. And obviously the edge rushers and a little bit the linebackers helping a ton in the pass rush game. We kind of just need them to not massively suck. And if they can just manage to not massively suck, that will probably be good enough. But some of these takes about the Packers that I've been hearing recently are just shocking to me. I mean, I told you before, I made the point of, you know, everybody's acting like the Packers were like a 6-win team prior to getting Micah Parsons. And I just saw somebody, I don't think I have it, but they were talking about, oh yeah, the Packers. I mean, let's be honest, they were probably a 7-8 win team prior to getting Micah Parsons. In what effing universe are the Packers a 7 or 8 win team? What are you talking about? In the last 20 years, how many times have the Packers won 7 games? What, once, twice? You had the year Rodgers was out the entire year, and then like the next year after that. People just think they know things that are incredibly wrong. Yeah, 2017, 2018, 7 wins and 6 wins. And then after that, it was 13, 13, 13. 2022, Rodgers played like crap and we won 8 games. 2023, the Packers started off playing like crap until Jordan kind of figured it out, picked it up, and then we went on a big win streak. 2024, it was right back to 11 wins with a hurt quarterback. 7-8 wins. Where are you getting this from? The last time, outside of those 2 ridiculous years in 2017 and 18, the last time they won 7 games was 2008 when they won 6. It was Rodgers' rookie year. They went to the playoffs 13 of, 16 years after that? 13 of 16? Matt LaFleur has missed the playoffs 1 time, and it was the Aaron Rodgers final year. Well, let's be honest, they're a 7-8 win team until Micah Parsons came along. You are an idiot. I figure I'll throw this one in the mix because I find it funny. Devin Hester talking to Kay Adams. Let me make sure the volume is up here.
So 3 teams make the playoffs out of the NFC North? I think so. Do you think so?
I think so too. I think 3 teams make it this year. Just because, of course, we're gonna have to play each other in our division, but outside our division, I feel like Chicago.
Mention Chicago first because that was a team he played for.
I feel like Green Bay.
Goes to Green Bay because that's actually the team at top of mind that he thinks is going to be the best.
I feel like Detroit would be last. I feel like Minnesota would go in front of Detroit.
What?
Yes.
Yes. I'm telling you, with the OC change, you guys will see with the OC change, it make Detroit the last 3 years was known for their offense.
This is a good point.
Mm-hmm.
If we really want to be honest. You take away them averaging 20, 28 points a game, you take that away, they lose a lot of games. The defense was okay, was pretty good, but it was their offense that kept the defense off the field a lot. And when you got an offense that's 3 and out constantly throughout the first half, those defensive players are worn down by the second half. Now I don't see that offense keeping that defense off the field so much. I feel like that offense is the first couple of games going to struggle. And when it's struggling, it gets the defense tired because now they're on the field more.
Now, you could probably ask the question how much of the defense struggling was with all the injuries and whatnot. So if you look at 2023 with Dan Campbell, they had the 5th in terms of points. Well, points and yards, they were 5th and 3rd for offense, 23rd and 19 for defense. 2024, the defense got better, but they ranked 7th and 20th in terms of points and yards. They gave up the 30th most yards through the air, 23rd most net yards per attempt, 18th most rushing touchdowns, 22nd most yards per attempt rushing at 4.5 yards. They ranked 23rd in percentage of drives ending in a score, 19th in net yards per drive. And again, I know there were a lot of injuries, but if you look at their last, since week 14, which is a Green Bay Packers game, their defense gave up 31, 48, 17, 34, 9, 45. So 9 and 17 against Chicago and Minnesota. Otherwise, 31, 48, 34, and 45. Those are the scores their defense gave up in 4 of their last 5 games. Green Bay scored 31, and they won the game because of the offense. San Francisco scored 34, and they won. 3 of those games were regular season games. The defense gave up 31, 48, 34, and they went 2-1 in those games because they scored 34, 42, and 40. So that Bills game, they actually scored 42 points and lost. And then in the playoffs, they scored 31 points and lost. So, we'll see getting Aiden Hutchinson back is obviously going to help. But again, their top 2 defensive tackles are still out. So it's not like, they're back and they're healthy now. Not really. And so we'll see losing your defensive coordinator, still having your defensive tackles out. I'm going to be that's going to be a big storyline for me, and I would guess their defense is going to be at least adequate compared to how they ended the season last year and compared to 2023. But if their defense really is not good, I mean, you end up being like the 2011 Packers or the 2012 or 2013 or 2014 or 2015 or 2016 Packers. You got a really good offense, and you're going to win a lot of regular season games. You're not going to win a Super Bowl because you don't have a defense. Now, do I agree that they're going to be fourth in the division? No, that will be the Bears. Probably. I mean, possibly you could say the Vikings if the quarterback situation is a disaster and the Bears actually take a little bit of a step. No Powerball winner? I forgot to check. I just told myself that there was going to be a winner so I could stop worrying about it. I love, for those of you that are new, occasionally you have to just deal with my ADD issues. You know what I love? Daydreaming about winning the the Powerball. I will go buy a lottery ticket with just one number on. I think it's like $1. I don't know, $2. Some place it was $2, and I was like, why is it $2? It should be $1. Maybe it's that way everywhere. Maybe it's just Illinois. I don't know. But there's a reason I don't get 50 of them. It's because it's not about winning. It's about what if. It's exciting stuff. Also, I'm going to put the same caveat I have on every time. Any of you guys win the Powerball, please remember I exist. Just one small donation of like 10 million will be fine. Okay? Or 5 million if you're going to be cheap about it. What is the payout on that? 1.7 billion. I looked at like 1.3, 1.4 or something. It was 400 million, which is psychotically low. That's insane to me. Jeez, it's still not even 500 million. It's up to almost 2 billion and you can't give me 500 million lump sum. Granted, the gross payout is 884 apparently. It's even less than that. They're saying the lump sum payout will be 770 million. That's 45%. So they're only going to give you 45% of what you say you won because you wanted in a lump sum. And then the federal government takes 184 million, additional federal tax of 100 million, so almost 300 million they take, and then the state would take almost 60 million. It went from like 1.3 billion to 1.7 billion, and the net payout moved like a couple million. Crazy. Anyway, sorry. Next up is NFL Spotlight with Ari Mirov. He's joined by Ben Allen, senior producer / host of 33rd Team. Fair enough. So they're going through and doing their award prediction show. Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, etc., etc. Ari went with Aiden Hutchinson, and he says that, obviously he's in the running for Comeback Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, whatever. Entirely fine with that. I don't have any issues with that. As I just said earlier, Hutchinson is absolutely a beast. Here is Ben and what he had to say.
I'm going to go not outside the box and say Micah Parsons. But what I'll do for outside of the box, I think he breaks the sack record this year. I think and I don't think he breaks it. I think he destroys it. I think he goes 25. That's my bold prediction of the year. 25 sacks from Micah Parsons. I think he just goes out there. I know he's paid, but I think he's going to want to shove it to Jerry every single chance he gets. And you can't tell me that the Packers aren't going to just be like, have at it. You go do your thing. Just run straight at the quarterback and do whatever else you can to just plow over people in front of you. Could you see him having like some big sack season?
I mean, of course. I mean, this is one of the best sack artists there are in the NFL. And I think this defensive line is better than what he had in Dallas. So I'm not going to go to 25 sacks, but I do agree he's going to come out with vengeance and want to show everybody and prove to everybody that week one game. I don't know if you saw the quotes here on Tuesday or Wednesday. Jordan Love spoke to reporters and he said, I could already see it. That first game versus the Lions, third down, Micah Parsons gets the sack. The crowd is going crazy. So everyone in Green Bay is like ready for this, including the quarterback. So everyone is ready for that. But I still have Aiden winning that award here. He's the guy for me. But I'm all in with you. That week 4 game, Micah Parsons versus the Cowboys. He's coming for Dak Prescott's head. As much as he loves him, he's coming.
I agree.
It is pretty out there. I mean, 25. I mean, I'm not even going to really entertain that. Not that it's impossible, but there's not a lot to put behind that. I think the biggest critique would be, this guy gets 12 every year, and Micah had made a point at one point in a video, I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was something to the effect of like, yeah, I just got to go get my 12 every year. It's like, no, dude, you can do more than that. You don't have to check out after 12. But I do think it was an important point that this is a better situation than what he was in. For some reason, there's a counter narrative. It was, oh, yeah, well, he doesn't have the guys that he had over there in Dallas. You're right. He has a better situation in Green Bay than he did with Dallas. The players are better. The defensive coordinator is better. Shouldn't be that shocking considering they have a new defensive coordinator this year because the last guy got fired. That is actually one of the things I wanted to talk about today, going through some of the records and which of them could be broken, but we'll save that for another time. It is pretty, I'll say I'm surprised, and maybe it's just because he's in the news and everybody's just trying to get their clicks and they know if they make a video about Micah Parsons, you're going to get more clicks right now. So maybe it's strategy, but I am surprised how many people, in fact, I think even Vegas has him odds-on favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, Micah Parsons at DraftKings, Micah Parsons is plus 600, Aiden Hutchinson plus 750, Myles Garrett plus 850, followed by Watt 950, Crosby 1300, Will Anderson 1400. Think about how crazy that is. Will Anderson is a freak. Micah Parsons has like twice as good of odds as Will Anderson does. He's ahead of Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, and TJ Watt. At FanDuel, they're giving him 7-1 to win. Aiden Hutchinson and TJ Watt and Myles Garrett 9-1. Will Anderson 15-1. Sports Betting Dime has him at plus 650, which is 13.3% implied odds. Oddspedia, which apparently is FanDuel now, but they have Micah plus 500. That's crazy. Hutchinson 750, Garrett 850, Watt plus 1,000. And it kind of seems confusing to me at first blush in terms of, do you think he would be the top guy? You would look at other guys like Garrett or whatever and say, why wouldn't you choose them over somebody like Micah Parsons? Like Myles Garrett seems to be a really good option. But if you look at it, like Aiden Hutchinson, for example, he looked like he was on pace for an unbelievable mega breakout season. I mean, year 1, 2, and 3, his grades went from 81, 91, 95. His pass rush from 70, 91, 95. And if you look at this 5 games that he played, his pass rush grades 96, 90, 83, 91, 94. He had 45 pressures in just 5 games on 198 attempts, 8 sacks in 5 games. He had 5 sacks in one game against Tampa Bay, week 2. But he also had a sack in every other game except week 4, Seattle, where he had 15 pressures. However, there's a consistency issue here. We don't know enough about Hutchinson. We don't know if 2024 was a fluky one-off thing or if that's really what he's headed for. And he's never had more than 11 sacks. In other words, he's never had a single season. His best season was never as good from a sack number as Micah Parsons. So it's a little bit more high risk, even if it feels like he's probably going to have a better year than Micah Parsons. TJ Watt is similar. TJ Watt had 12 sacks last year, 20 sacks the year before that. He also had 22 in 2021. He had 15 in 2020, 18 in 2019. Why wouldn't you pick him? Well, he also had 4 in 2022. He had 8 in 2017, and he's going to be 31 years old this year. Myles Garrett might be the safest of the bunch. He's had pass rush grades in the 90s since 2019, and he's had sack numbers of at least 13 since 2020, and that's 13, 18, 18, 15, 14. But again, 30 years old. I might lean Garrett, but it does make sense to look at Parsons when you look at consistency. 4 years. His grades have been 93, 92, 94, 92 as a pass rusher. There is nobody that can touch that as far as the pass rush grades. His sacks, 14, 14, 16, 14. I might have said 12 before. The number is 14. As a floor, it's 14, even with a bad team. Dallas had nothing. They don't have a good defensive coordinator. They don't have a good second pass rusher. They don't have defensive tackles. He still had a 92 pass rush grade, 70 pressures, and 14 sacks. I mean, again, when you talk about best pure pass rusher, it is hard to not say, I mean, Myles Garrett is there if you look over the last 4 years, 93, 95, 94, 93. I mean, he has been on an absolute tear, but before that it was, 90, 91, 86, and 79. It took a little bit of time for him to ramp up. he's been there ever since. 2019, he's at least a 90 grade. But also, you got to worry a little bit about the ramp back down. Factor in, he went from 18 to 15 to 14 sacks over the last 3 years, meaning it's his worst sack year since 2019, and it's at Micah Parsons' floor as Micah Parsons goes to a new team that has better talent and a better defensive coordinator around him. I think the assumption is, if you look at it, he's going to have a pass rush grade, assuming health, in the 90s again, and he's probably going to have a minimum of 15 sacks. And the only reason I say that is if 14 genuinely is his floor, we have to assume he's going to do better than his floor. So let's just call it 15. Do you feel imminently confident that Myles Garrett will have let's take a look at Micah again here. His lowest pass rush grade did come last year. It was a 92 PFF pass rush grade. Now, Micah hasn't had one lower than that since 2020, which is insane. These two guys over the last 4 years have been ridiculous. These two. And again, you might have a guy in Aiden Hutchinson that is something like we have not seen. I mean, if what he did for the first 5 weeks there is reminiscent of what he's going to do, good Lord. By the way, Hutchinson, despite only going into his 4th year this year and having only played 2 full years, he's 1 year younger than Micah Parsons. But if he's able to continue doing what he started doing last year, Hutchinson will be the top guy. But it will be followed by Garrett and Parsons, with Garrett being on the way out, meaning Parsons and Aiden Hutchinson, depending on who comes into the NFL, these are going to be the top 2 guys for the next, 3, 4, 5 years. And it's insane to me that we just snapped our fingers and we have that now. And when you think about the implications of that, when people talk about who are the top pass rushers, starting maybe next year or the year after, depending on how long Myles Garrett can continue doing his freakish stuff, there will be 2 main names, and it will be Hutchinson and Parsons. Again, Watt is an absolute freak, but he's going to be 31 this year. I don't know how much more he has left in the tank, and so there's that. Nick Bosa is still relatively young. You could maybe put him in that category, but the injuries have been kind of a lot. And in the last 2 years, he's had 14 and 10 sacks. His pass rush grade, and this sounds super nitpicky, but in the last 4 years, remember that's Garrett and Parsons have dominated, he had 2 grades that were 89. So again, getting super nitpicky here. Alex Highsmith over in Pittsburgh is fantastic, but I think he's a beneficiary of having somebody elite on the other side. His sack numbers are also quite low. The last 2 years, he's had 86, 89 as a pass rush grade, which is phenomenal, but his sacks were 7 and 6. Trey Hendrickson, likewise, he's been dominant for the last 3 years, not quite 4. I mean, it's technically been 5, but we're talking about a whole new level of dominant here. 3 years in the 90s. The grades were 90, 90, and 90. The last 2 years, his sack numbers have been 20 and 18, which is stupid. But the year prior to that was 9, and he's going to be 31 this year. So again, when we're talking about 2 years from now, who are the names that everybody's talking about? I think some other names to possibly consider, obviously Will Anderson, but even that, he has not even cracked an 80 pass rush grade yet, and he just hit 12 sacks, which was a high off of his rookie season of 7. So he's at 7 and 12. The idea that he's going to eventually become Parsons, who walked into the league with a 93 pass rush grade and 14 sacks as a rookie, probably not. Jared Verse I like a lot, came into the league with an 84 pass rush grade, but 6 sacks. So again, maybe he may take a big jump this year, could end up being a stud. And then a super outside possibility here would be Nick Bonito. He was a super intriguing guy coming out of the draft, where he's really good pass rusher, but a lot smaller. He cracked 15 sacks last year. The problem is prior to that was 9 and 3, and his pass rush grades have been 65, 70, and then this past year was a 75. So I don't know if it's a schematic thing or what, how he got to 15 sacks. Just a very high sack to pressure rate, or pressure to sack rate. But again, we'll see which guys end up coming out. Right now, it's kind of a 2-man race with Hutchinson and Parsons as the guys that are going to dominate for the next 5, 6, 7, however many years. We keep thinking, well, it can't last. Look at guys like Von Miller and tell me that we get like 3, 4 years with Micah and then that's it. And if we don't win a Super Bowl, it's over. That guy was in the league for what, 12? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I was freaking close. He's not what he was. And actually, in terms of how long he was elite, and it's crazy to me because I've always said Von Miller is one of the best. His numbers are not quite as good as Micah's. Pass rush in his first 4 years, 89, 93, 91, 87. Again, Micah's lowest was a 92 in his first 4 years. His sack numbers, 12, 19, 6, and 15. Now, Micah's never hit 19, but he's also never been below 14. I mean, you look at like the best of the best that we've seen of guys that have played in, the last 10 years or so. And it's like he is there. So as confused as I was to kind of be like, why would he be the odds-on favorite? I know he's good, but part of it isn't even necessarily that he's the best, it's the consistency. It's kind of like in fantasy football. I know this guy's going to get some 30s, but he also has weeks in like where it's like 6, or he has injury concerns or whatever. So even though you look at it and say, all things being equal, this guy's better, you might choose week 1 Myles Garrett over Micah Parsons or whatever. But when you factor in age, when you factor in the scheme around him, the team around him, when you factor in the injuries that a person may or may not have had over their career or how healthy they've been. I know Micah, the talk is that he missed some time last year and he has a back injury right now, but he's been quite healthy, which actually another interesting tidbit. You know how many games Rashawn Gary has missed? Not a ton. I mean, he had 2022, right? That was his kind of injured year. But the last 4 years, I mean, just looking at his snap counts, 680, 380, 580, 640. Maybe a little bit here and there that have been somewhat problematic or whatever. But anyways, I don't want to jinx anything, but if those guys can be healthy and play the entire year, that in and of itself gives you confidence in terms of where you're going to lay your money for Defensive Player of the Year, even if you don't necessarily think he's the best pass rusher. When you look at it in terms of risk, you could say he's maybe like the 3rd or 4th best pass rusher on your list. I'm not saying that's where he is with mine. I haven't made a list. I should do that for the sake of interest. But when you look at it in terms of risk and where you would put your money, the odds of some other people starting to decline, like Watt or like Garrett, and remember, decline doesn't mean bad. If you dip below mega elite, you're no longer in the conversation. When you think about it in those terms, the risk becomes relatively high. Von Miller starts to have statistically fantastic years, but you're talking PFF grade at 78, 13 sacks, and, a 13% pressure rate, something that very few pass rushers can even begin to aspire to. But yet for him, it's a down year. Khalil Mack, right? Still dominant, but he's starting to have a couple down years here and there. So part of that video felt silly. 25 sacks feels maybe a little bit silly, and it sounds like they were looking for some kind of a hot take. I think he made it a little too hot. But that has every time I hear it, and I don't want to argue against it because we have him on our team. Why would I argue against it? But Vegas has him as the top guy. It's one of those things where it's like, why have I always gone through life assuming Myles Garrett and TJ Watt and Nick Bosa, that these are the top guys, and Parsons is kind of on that level, but not quite. How have I made it this long without recognizing that not only is he at that level, he may be above every single other pass rusher on the list? How have I gone this long and not realized this? Odds-on favorite to be Defensive Player of the Year? That's crazy. Anyways, I think we'll leave it at that. I think we're pretty well caught up on everything. Played some of the fun little clips. As for Chiefs-Chargers, but let's run through a quick little dope sheet on this Chiefs-Chargers game. A little bit of the betting side of things as well. Again, I'm not going to be super helpful on that if I ever was, just because I don't really fully have a plan, especially week 1, in terms of what direction I want to go. I'm planning to put a little money somewhere. Worst case scenario, I may just throw like $10 on the Lions to hedge for this week. Either I win a couple bucks or I happily lost $10 because Packers won. I'm weird that way, all right? Leave me alone. Friday, September 5th, 2025, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time at Arena Corinthians in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The second NFL game in Brazil. Obviously, the Packers was the other one. Injury updates. The top receiver for the Chiefs, Rashee Rice, is out serving game 1 of a 6-game suspension for personal conduct policy. Rookie wide receiver Jalen Royals has a knee injury and is out for the opener as well. Why is PFF asking me questions? Want me to customize my PFF experience? Okay, fair enough. Just show me the Chiefs, stupid. So with that, the wide receiver situation, which I've said as for a while now has not been great. It never seems to matter all that much. They're still going to end up being a great team. Travis Kelce is going to be the biggest question mark, I think, this year because he has begun to slide at going on 36 years old. He was the number one tight end in football via PFF in 2022 with a 91 grade. He was the second highest graded the next year, but it dropped all the way down to an 83. So from a 91 to an 83. And then he dropped to 13th this past year to a 72. So 91, 83, 72 has been his slide. If he can bounce back, then they're ready to rock and roll. If he continues to slide, which, at 36 would not be that surprising. Now you've kind of lost your tight end in Kelce. You've lost your top receiver in Rashee Rice. You lost your rookie Jalen Royals for whatever that's worth. And so you're kind of looking at, Xavier Worthy. Maybe he ends up being a solid player. Hollywood Brown, who's never really been that great. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, who's also never really been that great. It is a tough, tough situation. Not to mention this offensive line is starting to look a little bit shaky. Jawan Taylor is not a good tackle. Kingsley Suamataia at left guard, at least as a rookie, was god-awful. We'll see if he ends up taking a step. And then they drafted at 32. Did they trade or something? I don't know. End of the first round, they drafted Josh Simmons to play left tackle. We'll see what that does. But, that could be three spots that are really not very good, with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith being center and right guard, very good football players. But Mahomes is dealing with, and Pacheco is not a super great running back. So, there's just not a lot here. And this is the team I've pointed to for years when Packer fans say we just don't have enough. The Chiefs, they have less than what we have, but they just have an incredible coaching staff. Anyways, defensive lineman Omar Norman Lott has an ankle injury and is questionable. Hollywood Brown also has a tweaked ankle but is expected to play. For the Chargers, Pro Bowl left tackle Rashawn Slater sustained a season-ending injury in the preseason. That is absolutely freaking massive. They do have, however, Joe Alt. I don't know. Was he maybe the right tackle or something? He's going to slot in at left tackle. He was a very good rookie. He ranked 24th, which isn't great, but had a 76 grade. The issue is, presuming Alt was the right tackle before, Pipkins is going to slot in at right tackle. He's a guard playing right tackle, which is not great. Najee Harris, the running back, off-season eye injury, full practice participant this week, is on track to play week 1. But that's about it. I don't know why the Chargers aren't a better team. With having Herbert as your guy, they brought in Omarion Hampton. If you remember, that was a huge name from North Carolina as far as running backs. He ended up going there. So they've got a running back. Lad McConkey is a stud. Herbert is a stud. And the offensive line is mediocre at worst. They also brought back Keenan Allen, who you can assume he's washed if you want, but he's had grades in the mid 80s, basically 2019 through 2023. His first year ever as a bad receiver was with that Chicago Bears disaster. I'm assuming at 33 he's going to start to slide, but I don't know that it's going to be as pronounced, and I don't see any reason why. 2 years ago, again, he was a top 10 wide receiver in football 2 years ago with this team, with this quarterback. They might have Allen and McConkey as really good wide receiver options, not to mention Quentin Johnston going into year 3, who was a first-round pick. Hasn't been great so far, but he took a big jump from being 94th to 65th, 59 grade to 67. If he can take another step and even be like a mediocre guy, you might have 2 top 20 wide receivers and a, top 50 as your number 3. It should be a really good team, at least on offense. Pat Mahomes coming off a relative down year statistically. 2024 was the first season he failed to reach 4,000 yards. Career low 245.5 yards per game, 6.8 yards per attempt, but 15-2 record, right? There's just no stopping this freaking machine, and that's part of the reason why I give Andy Reid. I know Andy Reid already gets a lot of credit, but I think the share leans heavily on Mahomes, and I put a little bit more. Not that Mahomes isn't great, because he is, but I tend to put a little bit more on the coach in Andy Reid. Although I did that in New England as well, and that seemed to have been the wrong decision, but I'm going to do it here as well. Mahomes tends to dominate week 1, 21 touchdowns versus 2 interceptions in 7 week 1 games. Historically dominated the AFC West. Kansas City's won the division 9 years running. Hasn't lost to the Chargers since 2021, winning 7 straight in the rivalry. So again, you can look at it on paper and the Chargers should be okay. Although again, the defense it's got some holes. Khalil Mack is there. Everybody forgets about Mack or assumes he's done. He was the 5th highest graded with a 90 grade last year. He still dominates. They've also still got Derwin James at safety, who's a freak. Some questionable stuff outside of that, but they've got something. Herbert in year 5, looking for a breakthrough season. Guided LA to an 11-6 record and a wildcard berth in 2024. Still has 0 playoff wins as his resume, which is what's caused everyone to start hating on him. They believe the supporting cast around Herbert was the issue. Second-year head coach Jim Harbaugh overhauled the offense this offseason. That's also worth mentioning. Harbaugh was brought in. The team really did take a bit of a jump in terms of its production, and now this coach, Harbaugh, has decided that what we need to do is add some playmakers, and they did. Again, I don't know how much stock you want to put in Keenan Allen. I'm going to put more in him than just about anybody else. But they went out and got Amari and Hampton again and whatnot. We'll see. Herbert has a rebuilt arsenal of weapons. Rookie running back Amari and Hampton, who's a first-round pick. Ex-Steeler running back Najee Harris in the backfield, so there's your 1-2. Plus rookie Trey Harris. Forgot about that guy. I doubt he's going to have much of a role, but that's my dude right there. I've only got 2 kinds of takes when it comes to the draft. Great takes and horrible takes. Trey Harris is leaning toward horrible take, but I'm going to hang on to that. Wide receivers, that's my son. He's the one that gets the wide receivers. I have a terrible track record with wide receivers. I think I've gotten better once I stopped going after every 5'9", 160-pound speedy slot receiver. That never works in the NFL. Once I learned to stop grabbing them, I was fine. Herbert has often put up big stats, but struggled to finish off Kansas City. He hasn't beaten the Chiefs since Mahomes became Kansas City's starter. His lone win versus Kansas City came in 2021. This game is a chance for Herbert to change that narrative on a big stage abroad. Key matchups, Chiefs' new left tackle versus Chargers' pass rush. So you got Josh Simmons and you got Khalil Mack. I don't know how often they're going to be lined up against each other, but that's going to be a big one to watch. Joey Bosa is a Buffalo Bill now, but, still got some firepower with Khalil Mack in there. Travis Kelce versus Derwin James be a pretty good matchup to watch. For obvious reasons, these are 2 top people. Again, the Chargers don't have a ton of powerhouses on defense, but Derwin is absolutely one of them. Mahomes is obviously the go-to target, even at 35 years old. Chargers All-Pro safety Derwin James is typically tasked with shadowing Kelce. The chess match is always pivotal. If LA's top-ranked scoring defense, only 17.9 points allowed in 2024, can contain Kelce, it forces Kansas City's other receivers to step up. And keep in mind, the receivers are very thin with no Rice or Royals. So that's probably going to be, chess move number 1. Derwin on Kelce, take him away, and now what are you going to do? Another is going to be the Chargers' ground game versus the Chiefs' run defense. LA's offense could try to set the tone on the ground with their new 1-2 punch at running back. Najee Harris and rookie Omari and Hampton present a power-speed combo that could exploit the known Chiefs' weakness, run defense. Kansas City struggled to stop the run in the preseason, prompting them to trade to reacquire defensive tackle Derek Nottie for interior help. If the Bolts establish the run attack early, it will keep Mahomes off the field and open up play-action shots for Herbert. Look for the Chiefs linebackers Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill to key in on Harris and Hampton. And then you've got O-line for the Chargers against the Chiefs pass rush with Slater out. Chargers shuffled their offensive line. Chiefs defensive front led by all-pro defensive tackle Chris Jones and edge George Karlaftis will try to capitalize on Slater's absence. Pretty straightforward, obviously. Looking at trends, Chiefs went 15-2 last season, winning their 9th straight AFC West title and ultimately the AFC Championship. Their bid for the 3rd consecutive Super Bowl fell short in a lopsided Super Bowl LAX loss, 59, right? Pretty sure. Notably, Kansas City's offense was relatively subdued by its standards, finishing 15th in scoring for the 2nd year in a row, but the defense emerged as a strength, one of the top scoring defenses in the league. Pat Mahomes in September is almost automatic. He's 19-4 in the month of September as a starter, an 8-2-6 win percentage, second best in the Super Bowl era. Andy Reid's squad has been a fast-starting team and will look to continue that trend in this neutral site opener. By the way, didn't they lose that game to the Lions like last year or 2 years ago when they didn't have their defensive tackle or Travis Kelce? So it ended up, the point is their record is even better than that because that was a fluky freaking game. Chargers 11-6, second in the AFC West last year, made the playoffs as a wild card under Jim Harbaugh. Season ended in a blowout 32-12 wild card loss, extending the franchise's playoff drought. They haven't won a playoff game since 2018. 2024 Chargers were defined by a stout defense. They allowed the fewest points in the NFL, just 17.9 points per game. That is an interesting tidbit I would not have thought. Coupled with an offense that was inconsistent at times, offensively had some breakout performances. For example, rookie wide receiver Ladd McConkey's 1,100 yards. But also had injuries, etc., blah, blah, blah. In fact, the Chargers held a fourth quarter lead in 5 of the last 7 games against Kansas City and were tied in another, yet failed to close out any of those with wins. That is a superpower of the Chiefs. They are not rattled by anything, and they are at their strongest when they're down in the fourth quarter. Both teams enter 2025 with Super Bowl aspirations. The Chiefs are an established powerhouse. Many pundits rank them top 3 in the power rankings, looking for a golden dynasty decade with a 10th straight divisional crown. It's interesting. Los Angeles viewed as a dangerous contender, but something of a wild card. Many project them as a playoff team, but not yet at KC's level. A week 1 over the Chiefs in Brazil would be an early statement the Chargers belong in the elite conversation. I like this too because it makes it fun. You know, it's hard to care about some of these games, but this is a fun storyline. I mean, nobody really cares about the Chargers or wants to think about the Chargers, but I mean, think about it. You've had this dominant quarterback you haven't been able to do a freaking thing with. You've been ill-equipped, ill-run, bad coaching staffs or whatever. Then you go out and get Harbaugh. Harbaugh starts to make differences. Your defense looks super scary, which is kind of a Harbaugh special. Then you start packing on a bunch of people to help your quarterback, some offensive firepower, and you come out and say, I'm sick of the freaking Chiefs. I'm sick of these people talking. I'm sick of everybody doubting us. Now is our time. We're going to come out and punch these freaking guys in the mouth. It's on a much larger scale to what we're trying to do to Detroit. Packers have obviously dominated the division over the last 30 years. But for the last 2, it's been all Detroit. This is the week to come out and punch these freaking guys in the mouth and prove that it's us that you should be worried about. Conversely, if the Chiefs win, it reinforces the status quo in the AFC West. It's only one game, but the result could set the tone for both teams' season. It's very true. I mean, you'd like to think it's not true that level of emotion would cause anything, but it really does. Or I should say it really can. Some teams are much more resilient than others. We heard a lot about the rivalry recently. The Chiefs have pretty well dominated it. The Chiefs lead the all-time series dating back to their AFL days. Andy Reid is 15-3 against the Chargers since becoming the Chiefs' coach. Mahomes has faced the Chargers 12 times, put up 3,270 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions in those games. He's 10-2 unofficially in those starts. Unofficially, I don't know what that means. The AI isn't positive. Herbert, meanwhile, has often played very well against the Kansas City Chiefs. That was the other thing that kind of... I always remember the Chiefs playing... the Chargers playing the Chiefs very well, but I guess they haven't closed out a ton of times. In fact, I had to go back and kind of check it because, again, my recollection is the Chargers had done much better. But yeah, if you look, 2024, it was loss. 2023 was a loss. 2022, loss. 2021, loss in overtime. Then there were 2 wins, and then loss, win, loss, all the way back to 2014. So yeah, since 2014, obviously this predates anything that we're seeing today as far as quarterbacks and coaches and whatnot. But since that time, 3 wins for the Chargers, and that's it. Chiefs open as roughly 3-point favorites in a neutral site matchup. The point spread has hovered around Kansas City -3 to -3.5 as of the game week. The over-under for the total is in the mid-40s, about 45.5, reflecting expectations of moderate scoring. Both prior meetings last year landed in the 30s total. Moneyline odds give Kansas City roughly -160 favorite versus Los Angeles +140, implying about 60% implied win probability for the Chiefs. ESPN analytical model gives Kansas City a 57% chance to win. Most analysts are leaning Kansas City, but in a close contest, all 5 NFL.com panelists, for example, picked the Chiefs to win by 1 score in their Week 1 predictions. The average score prediction among them was 25-20, Chiefs' favor. Consensus is that while the Chargers are a formidable opponent with a top-tier defense, the Chiefs' championship experience and track record in early season games give them a slight edge on the big stage. Some other little factors here. Obviously, traveling to Brazil is pretty massive. Both teams travel approximately 5,500 miles to Sao Paulo for this game. Chargers flew out Wednesday, September 3rd to give the players a couple days to acclimate. Kansas City followed a similar schedule, arriving midweek. The time difference is modest. So jet lag is less severe than London games, but the total fatigue and disruption to routine is still a consideration. Players and staff emphasize rest and hydration. Worth noting for week 2, neither team has a week 2 bye week, obviously, so any physical toll or impact is going to just be told on their body, and there's no rest. So just something to consider for week 2. They've got a hybrid grass surface out there at Arena Corinthians. Notably, last year's game in Sao Paulo had slippery field conditions, as I'm sure you'll all remember. Players from the Packers and Eagles reportedly repeatedly lost footing on the turf. Became such a talking point, even LeBron James and J.J. Watt commented on it. They did promise better turf conditions this time around. We'll see if that happens. Still, players are preparing for a potentially slick surface. Najee Harris said making sharp cuts on a slippery field is extremely difficult, and he's bringing screw-in cleats and long studs to adjust for traction if needed. Weather forecast is to be upper 60s on a dry Friday night, so rain shouldn't be a factor. All eyes will be on turf integrity. Apparently, they've painted the end zones to say fin de racismo, which is end racism, so that's all the important things are being moved over. Maybe not good field conditions, but at least the field will say end racism on it, so that's what's important. Hopefully one of these days, these signs will end racism. That's the hope. Both teams have embraced the opportunity, with Chargers even hosting a Brazilian churrasco, which is a barbecue team dinner at a hotel. That's freaking awesome. Got to get out to Brazil one day, man. One of these days. I know, obviously, like everybody, we're not going to catch most of the countries, but I would really like to get to Brazil. It's on the short list. Japan would be cool. Brazil. I've kind of given up on Europe. Maybe like southern France or something. Spain, Greece. I don't know. But Brazil would be fantastic. Thailand. I'd like to go to Thailand sometime. Get one of those hotels that's attached to a Muay Thai gym. Spend like a month out there and just train Muay Thai. Super cheap. All your meals are paid for. Be money. Apparently, they're not allowed to practice on the field. That's one of their efforts to preserve the field. Neither team held practice or walkthrough at the stadium prior to the game. It's a bit unusual. Teams usually do at least a walkthrough at a neutral venue, but it was decided after last year's turf issues, special teams units will have to get a feel for surfaces during warm-ups. So if you have the Chiefs kicker or the Chargers kicker, maybe look for a new kicker. All right. I think that's enough. In terms of the betting, let's take a look at what our spreadsheet says here. So remember, we've got 4 different metrics, and I haven't decided on if I'm going to use any or which one I would or whatever. Again, it's Friday. It's a different country. Not a good game to be betting, period. But if we're looking at, -3, let me just check the lines and see if that's still the case or what we've got here. Yeah, that's sitting at -3. That is -3 across the board, everybody, as far as I can see. All the places. So what do we got here? We got Chargers -6, Chargers -3.2, Chargers -3, Chargers -1. Every single one of these is pointing Chargers. Now, that is with the Chargers at home. It is at home. Let me just flip it and see what that does. That puts Kansas City ahead in just 2 of these, and all of them are not quite at 3. This one puts Kansas City at -2.9, but again, a neutral field. You shouldn't bet this game, but I'm jonesing to put a bet down. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to bet Chargers. I'm doing it. I should bet the Thursday game too, just because it's something to do. Or I could just not be a degenerate. I don't know. We'll see. But don't be like me. Don't bet this game. I'm putting money down on the Chargers to win. Max bet allowed $10,395. I don't think I'm going to put quite that much. All right, it's locked in. First bet of the year. I'm betting against the Chiefs. How freaking stupid am I? Yay! Kicked off the season by being an idiot, betting on a Sao Paulo game on a Friday against the Chiefs. That's being smart. All right, folks, I'm out of here. You all have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.